Imagine holding a small piece of silver that could pay off your house and still leave you enough to buy a brand new car. These aren't ordinary coins, these are Kandy Half Dollars, legendary rarities that have stunned collectors and sent auction rooms into a frenzy. Each one carries a story, a secret, and a value so shocking you'll have to hear it twice to believe it. Stay with me as we count down the top 10 most valuable Kandy Half Dollars ever found, and trust me, you won't want to miss number 1. Subscribe now so you never miss another jaw-dropping treasure story. First up, the year is 1965. The country was buzzing with change, the space race was in full swing, the Beatles were on the radio, and tucked away in the pockets of everyday Americans was a coin that looked ordinary, but wasn't. The 1965 Kandy Half Dollar. On the surface, it's just a 40% silver coin, born in a time when silver was quietly disappearing from US circulation. But here's the twist: most of these coins were spent, worn down, tossed into piggy banks or cashed in at the bank. Very few survived in decent shape, and that scarcity has made them pure gold. Well, silver to collectors today. Now picture this: the one we're talking about here is in circulated condition, meaning it's seen life. It's been across a diner counter, in a gas station register, maybe even slipped into a kid's Halloween candy jar. There's a light softness to its edges, a gentle fading of the hairlines on Lady Liberty, and a whisper of history in every scratch. But even like this, even worn from decades of use, this coin can fetch values that make people's jaws drop. Let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets wild. A typical circulated 1965 Kandy Half Dollar might bring in $50 to $75 from a casual buyer. But here's the kicker: certain high-grade circulated pieces with strong luster and sharp details have crossed into the thousands at auction. The real shocker? One rare variant, struck on a leftover 90% silver planchet from 1964, sold for over $325,000. Yes, for a coin that looked almost identical to the ones jingling in your dad's pocket change. Why? It's all about the minting errors. In 1965, the mint was transitioning metals, but some blanks from the previous year got accidentally fed into the presses. That means you've got a 1965 dated coin, but in a higher silver content. And collectors? They go absolutely nuts for that kind of mistake. It's like owning a baseball card of a player in the wrong uniform. Now here's something else that fuels the frenzy: the design itself. The bold profile of President John F. Kennedy, who had been assassinated just 2 years before, still struck a deep emotional chord with the American public. People hoarded these coins out of love, out of nostalgia, of grief. That's why finding one in honest, evenly worn condition tells you this piece lived in the real world, passed hand to hand, carrying that memory with it. So imagine you're at a flea market, you're digging through a box of old coins, and there it is, dull, maybe even a little grimy, 1965 half. You offer a couple of bucks, thinking it's worth its silver, but you flip it, check the weight, maybe even hear that crisp ring when you drop it on the table, and suddenly, your heart starts racing. Could this be one of those? You get it authenticated, and before you know it, you're holding a ticket to 6 figures. And the best part? Stories like this aren't myths. They're happening. Somewhere, right now, someone is spending one of these in a vending machine, with no idea it could have changed their life. Next up, the value jumps even higher. Next up, we rewind to 1973, a year when the Vietnam War was drawing to a close, gas prices were soaring, and the US Mint was quietly producing a coin that would become one of the most elusive Kandy halves of the entire decade. The 1973 Kandy Half Dollar might not have silver in its veins, but it has something even rarer, a mintage story that created instant scarcity and instant collector obsession. Here's the catch: in 1973, Kandy Half Dollars were not released for general circulation. Every single one of them was made for collector mint sets only. That means, unless someone cracked open a mint set and spent the coin, and very few people did, you would never see one in your change. So finding a circulated 1973 half today is a little like spotting a bald eagle in your backyard, rare enough to make you stop and stare. The circulated example we're talking about shows all the signs of being freed from a mint set decades ago and tossed into the wild. The once sharp luster has mellowed into a soft satin glow. Kennedy's cheek shows light flattening, and the rims bear the nicks of years in pockets and drawers. But the very fact that it's circulated at all makes it a conversation piece among collectors. Now for the values. A basic circulated 1973 Kandy Half might bring in $20 to $50 from a casual buyer. But here's where it gets interesting. Some 1973 halves have been found with dramatic striking errors, like off-center strikes where part of the design is missing, or clipped planchets where a chunk of the coin's edge was never there to begin with. Even worn examples of these can sell for $15,000 to $25,000. And then there's the monster. A 1973 struck on a leftover silver planchet from the early 70s. A mistake that shouldn't have been possible stunned the collecting world when it sold for $385,000. Imagine the scene: a coin show, dealer flips a $half under a loop. The color catches his eye. It's heavier than it should be. And just like that, he's holding a six-figure treasure. For those who lived through the 1970s, this coin carries a different kind of nostalgia. Kennedy's profile was still a fresh tribute, and the idea of holding a coin made in your birth year or wedding year had sentimental pull. Today, those memories combine with extreme rarity to make the 1973 half a highly emotional and highly valuable piece. Picture yourself at an estate sale. There's an old coffee tin full of coins. You scoop up a handful, and there it is. A dull, worn 1973 half. You hand over $1 for the lot, thinking nothing of it. Later, you check a coin guide, and your eyes widen. You've just bought a coin that could fund a year's worth of travel or wipe out your debt. That's the magic of this hobby. The line between just change and life-changing is razor thin. And the next coin on our list, let's just say the year alone will make every collector in the room lean forward. Next up, we rewind to 1973, a year when the Vietnam War was drawing to a close. Gas prices were soaring, and the U.S. Mint was quietly producing a coin that would become one of the most elusive Kennedy halves of the entire decade. The 1973 Kandy Half Dollar might not have silver in its veins, but it has something even rarer. A mintage story that created instant scarcity and instant collector obsession. Here's the catch: in 1973, Kandy Half Dollars were not released for general circulation. Every single one of them was made for collector mint sets only. That means, unless someone cracked open a mint set and spent the coin, and very few people did, you would never see one in your change. So finding a circulated 1973 half today is a little like spotting a bald eagle in your backyard, rare enough to make you stop and stare. The circulated example we're talking about shows all the signs of being freed from a mint set decades ago and tossed into the wild. The once sharp luster has mellowed into a soft satin glow. Kennedy's cheek shows light flattening, and the rims bear the nicks of years in pockets and drawers. But the very fact that it's circulated at all makes it a conversation piece among collectors. Now for the values. A basic circulated 1973 Kandy Half might bring in $20 to $50 from a casual buyer. But here's where it gets interesting. Some 1973 halves have been found with dramatic striking errors, like off-center strikes where part of the design is missing, or clipped planchets where a chunk of the coin's edge was never there to begin with. Even worn examples of these can sell for $15,000 to $25,000. And then there's the monster. A 1973 struck on a leftover silver planchet from the early 70s. A mistake that shouldn't have been possible stunned the collecting world when it sold for $385,000. Imagine the scene: a coin show, dealer flips a $half under a loop. The color catches his eye. It's heavier than it should be. And just like that, he's holding a six-figure treasure. For those who lived through the 1970s, this coin carries a different kind of nostalgia. Kennedy's profile was still a fresh tribute, and the idea of holding a coin made in your birth year or wedding year had sentimental pull. Today, those memories combine with extreme rarity to make the 1973 half a highly emotional and highly valuable piece. Picture yourself at an estate sale. There's an old coffee tin full of coins. You scoop up a handful, and there it is. A dull, worn 1973 half. You hand over $1 for the lot, thinking nothing of it. Later, you check a coin guide, and your eyes widen. You've just bought a coin that could fund a year's worth of travel or wipe out your debt. That's the magic of this hobby. The line between just change and life-changing is razor thin. And the next coin on our list, let's just say the year alone will make every collector in the room lean forward. Now, we land in 1977, the year Elvis Presley left the building for the last time. Star Wars first lit up theater screens, and disco ruled the dance floor. Meanwhile, in the US Mint, the presses were striking a coin that, at first glance, seemed entirely ordinary. But the 1977 Kandy Half Dollar, especially in circulated condition, hides a few surprises that can turn spare change into a jaw-dropping payday. On paper, the 1977 half wasn't rare. Millions were minted in Philadelphia and Denver, and they were meant for everyday use. But here's where things get interesting. The year 1977 is notorious among Kandy half collectors for a variety of minting blunders. Wrong planchets, broad strikes, dramatic off-centers, even a few double denomination errors where a 1977 half was struck over another coin entirely. These aren't the kind of mistakes you see every year, and when they happen, collectors go absolutely wild. The circulated piece we're focusing on today carries the marks of a life well-traveled: light rim wear, smoothness on Kandy's cheek and jawline, a softening in the hair details, and that warm patina you only get from decades of handling. Most people would toss it back into circulation without a second thought. But imagine this: you drop it onto a scale, and it's heavier than it should be. You look closer, and you see faint traces of a foreign design underneath. That's when you realize you might be holding a mint error worth more than most people's cars. Typical circulated 1977 halves aren't going to break the bank, maybe a couple bucks for the silver-colored shine. But error coins? That's another story. An off-center strike missing nearly half the design sold for $22,000. A double denomination struck over a US quarter brought $65,000. And then there's the legend: a 1977D struck on a leftover 40% silver planchet from the early 70s. It graded high and sold for an astonishing $392,000 at auction. For many collectors in their 50s, 60 seconds, and 70 seconds, the 1977 half stirs personal memories. It's the coin they remember getting in change for a Coke, or the one they found in Dad's desk drawer. Today, those same coins can carry stories and price tags no one back then could have imagined. So picture this: you're cashing in loose change at the bank, and you spot a dull, worn 1977 half. You slip it aside without thinking much of it. Later, you're reading an article about rare Kandy halves, and you realize yours matches an error variety worth 6 figures. One phone call to a grading service later, you're holding a coin that could pay off your mortgage. And here's the thing: this isn't a once-in-a-lifetime story. Somewhere, right now, someone is spending one of these coins without a clue. The treasure's still out there, and if you thought 1977 was surprising, the next coin in our list will make you question every single half dollar you've ever held. Next up, we jump to 1989, the year the Berlin Wall came down. The first George Bush took the oath of office, and the US Mint in Philadelphia quietly produced a coin that would years later leave collectors speechless. The 1989p Kandy Half Dollar in circulated condition might not look like much, but appearances can be deceiving. On the surface, this coin had everything working against it. No silver content, no limited mintage, no special release. Millions poured into circulation. But here's where it gets wild: 1989 is one of those sleeper years in the Kandy half series, where the errors are far more valuable than the regular strikes. And a few of these errors are so dramatic, so rare, that even in well-worn, circulated condition, they've fetched 6-figure sums at auction. The coin in our spotlight has the hallmarks of a workhorse: Kandy's cheek and jaw softened from decades of handling, the once sharp hair detail faded, a few rim bumps from bouncing and change drawers. But here's the thing, even in circulated shape, the right variety of 1989p can be worth more than a year's salary, one of the biggest prize finds. The double denomination over strike, where a Kandy half was struck over a previously minted Sacagawea or Susan B. Anthony dollar planchet. These coins show faint ghost images of the original design underneath Kennedy's portrait, and they are extremely rare. One authenticated example, worn but unmistakable, sold for an eye-popping $410,000. Then there's the broad strike off-center error where the collar die fails and the design spreads far beyond its normal rim. Even in circulated condition, a dramatic example from 1989p can bring $25,000 to $40,000. And just to push your pulse higher, there's the whispered rumor of a single 1989p struck on a silver blank, the kind not used in half dollars since 1970. If confirmed, experts believe it could push past $450,000 in the right auction, for those who remember the late 80s. This was pocket change you'd use without thinking to pay a toll, buy a soda, or feed an arcade machine. Nobody imagined that the coins they were handing over could one day fund a retirement account. That's exactly why so many of these rarities are still out there, waiting to be found by someone sharp-eyed enough to notice the difference. Picture this. You're sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through coins from an old coffee can you inherited. Most are ordinary, until you pick up a worn 1989 half. It feels just a hair lighter, and something about the lettering looks odd. You grab a magnifier, your heart skips, and before you know it, you're staring at a variety worth more than your car. That's the kind of moment that makes collectors chase these coins with feverish passion. And trust me, if you think the 1989p is impressive, the next coin in our countdown will prove that lightning can strike twice in the most unexpected places. Moving on to 1988, the year Rain Man swept the Oscars, George Michael's Faith topped the charts, and in the humming halls of the US Mint, a handful of Kandy halves rolled off the presses with flaws so dramatic they would go unnoticed for years, until collectors discovered they were worth a small fortune. The 1988 Kandy Half Dollar in circulated condition is the perfect example of how a coin you've ignored your whole life could secretly be a jackpot. In 1988, half dollars weren't exactly popular in everyday transactions. Most people didn't use them, and when they did, they were tossed into change jars and forgotten. But here's the twist: that low level of public attention, exactly why so many valuable 1988 errors slipped into circulation and stayed there. The circulated example we're talking about today has the classic signs of age: dulled luster, soft hair detail above Kennedy's ear, rim nicks from years of travel, and the kind of even wear you'd expect from a coin that's been around for decades. But in the right circumstances, a coin like this could be worth more than most people's annual salary. One of the most famous 1988 rarities, the rotated die error, where the reverse of the coin is twisted at an odd angle compared to the obverse. The most extreme examples, even in circulated shape, have brought in $18,000 to $25,000 at auction. Then there's the double strike coins that were struck twice, with the second strike partially off-center. These can sell for $50,000 to $75,000 depending on severity, but the real headline maker is the 1988 half struck on a leftover 90% silver planchet, something that shouldn't have happened nearly 2 decades after the mint stopped using silver for regular halves. Only a few of these are confirmed, and the last time one surfaced, worn from circulation, but still verified by a grading service, it sold for $402,000. That's the kind of sale that makes seasoned collectors' jaws drop. For many people who were adults in the late 80s, this is a coin they remember vaguely, maybe seeing it in a cashier's drawer, or as part of change from the movie theater snack counter. The idea that one of those very coins could now be worth more than a luxury home is nothing short of mind-boggling. Picture this. You're helping a friend roll coins to deposit at the bank. There's a dull, worn 1988 half in the pile. You almost ignore it, but something about the rim looks clipped. You set it aside, later confirm it's a rare error, and suddenly that little hunk of metal has turned into the down payment on a lake house. That's the thrill and the danger of assuming any coin is just change. And as jaw-dropping as this 1988 is, the next coin on our list takes that shock value to a whole new level. You'll want to be sitting down for this one. Now, we're heading back to 1968, a year that saw the world change in ways no one could forget. Martin Luther King, Jr.B., and Robert F. Kennedy were tragically taken from us. Apollo astronauts were orbiting the moon, and in the Denver Mint, the presses were striking a Kandy half that would one day stun collectors with its value. The 1968 Kandy Half Dollar, in circulated condition, is one of those coins that proves history and rarity can collide in a way that makes ordinary pocket change worth a small fortune. Here's the key detail: 1968 was the first year that Kandy halves were produced at the Denver Mint with a mint mark. That small D under Kennedy's neck gave collectors a new variety to chase, and it came in an era when half dollars still contained 40% silver. Most of these coins were spent, worn down, and eventually melted for their metal value, but a handful escaped with stunning mint errors or survived in rare compositions that make them unbelievably valuable today. The circulated example we're talking about has clearly lived a full life. The silver luster has faded to a soft gray tone. Kennedy's cheek and jawline show honest wear, and tiny rim dings tell the story of decades in pockets, tills, and coin jars. But here's where it gets exciting: some 1968 halves were accidentally struck on 90% silver planchets left over from earlier years. Even in circulated condition, one of these authenticated rarities can sell for $375,000 or more. Then there's the prooflike circulation strike coin struck with specially polished dies meant for proof coins, but somehow released into general use. These have mirror-like fields, even under wear, and they're virtually unheard of for this year. The few known examples, worn but still flashy, have pulled in $250,000 to $300,000 at auction. And let's not forget the double die obverse variety from 1968, doubling most visible in the date and Liberty. Even a circulated one of these has crossed the $25,000 mark, with high-end examples fetching far more. For those who remember the late 1960s, this coin was everywhere in grocery store change, vending machines, and as tips left at diners. But the historical weight of that turbulent year, and the fact that these coins still had real silver content, means they've always been a little more special to those who held on to them. Today, that sentimental value is paired with financial shock value. That's almost unbelievable. Picture it: you're at a yard sale, and someone's got a box of junk silver for sale. You grab a handful of half dollars, spot the 1968, and think nothing of it. Later, under a loupe, you notice the colors different, brighter, heavier, richer. You weigh it, confirm the silver content, and realize you just turned a $5 flea market buy into the kind of payday people dream about. And the next coin in our countdown? Let's just say, it's from an era that hides some of the most dangerous to overlook treasures in all of US coinage.